Oh, hello, YouTube. Today in the Naughty Librarian, we are going over my hottest predictions for Season 2 of Interview with the Vampire. Interview with the Vampire is finally coming back for Season 2. It was much delayed due to the writer's strike and the actor's strike and all of the strikes. So there's been a lot of issues in its production, but it's here, it's complete. It's ready to go. It's going to be officially premiering on May 12th, but since they just dropped a new trailer that looks epic, I wanted to go over what I am predicting to see and maybe what I want to see in Season 2. So the tagline for this season is "Memory is the monster," which I think is great because, you know, for anyone who's read books 1 and 2, which is Interview with the Vampire and The Vampire Lestat, respectively, you realize that Louis isn't the most reliable narrator. I get it. During Interview with the Vampire, he was like in his feels for that interview. He was working his way through some stuff. So he maybe embellished a lot of things, or maybe made things sound worse than they actually were when it came to Lestat. And then you get Lestat's version of the book, and Lestat's like, what are you talking about? That never happened. And then you get to know Lestat in Lestat's own words, and you're like, this is a completely different character than we met in Louis' version. And that's just kind of how Louis is. He's a bit delusional, I would say, about a lot of things. He has this image of what he thought Lestat was in his brain. And then you have Claudia, that Louis has put on a pedestal since always. And then we really don't even get to hear Claudia speak in her own words until the book Merrick, and she comes back just for like a couple pages as a ghost. And in the show, obviously they've changed this, and we've actually got to hear sections of story from her perspective, which I really enjoy, because I think the show is doing a good job at showing just how different Claudia actually was from how Louis interprets her. So what I'm trying to say here is that Louis' storytelling is a bucket of contradictions, and the show is also having Daniel call him out on it and going, no, that's not what happened, that doesn't make any sense. So I think it's also about Louis in particular figuring out his actual story and who is he, what he was his actual memories, because I don't think he always knows what the truth of the memories were. I think a good chunk of this season will likely be dedicated to Louis forming a sense of self, because he's always been in these deeply codependent relationships with other people. And there's scenes in the trailer with Claudia asking him, hey, who are you outside of me, outside of Lestat? Like, who's Louis? Because I don't think Louis really knows who he is as a vampire. He's just been in all these codependent relationships as a coping mechanism. So who is Louis? Are we going to figure out who Louis is? I think that's a main part of this season, is Louis' self-discovery. Who knows? Maybe he'll decide to just go off on his own for a while? I don't know. That would be interesting to have the season end like that, with Louis just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm off of my own. Who knows? I don't know. It could go a lot of directions. Speaking of memories and all of that, let's talk about Armand for a second, the big bombshell reveal of Season 1. Similar to the book's portrayal, this version of Armand is a bit religious and also off-putting to be around, just because he doesn't really relate to people very well due to all kinds of traumas and etc. There's a whole book on the vampire Armand, but we're not going to get into that right now. The main difference that I've noticed, especially like in the finale of Season 1 and in the trailers for Season 2, is that Armand seems to be able to control or alter or create memories in people's minds, because Daniel had no recollection of Armand being there the last time he met with Louis, which is weird because I don't think Daniel has memory issues. So all of a sudden oh, that clicked in my brain. I found an uncovered memory. So I am wondering how many memories are going to be uncovered or revealed as perhaps false in Louis' own recollection of events, which I think might be the main impetus for him wanting to do this interview in the first place. He's trying to say the story as it goes in order to figure out what really happened. Because Louis might be starting to realize my memories don't always makes sense. So I think this is both of them trying to figure out what's actually going on and what actually did happen. Back to Armand in general. In the books, he and Louis were companions for X number of years after the Théâtre des Vampires, and it was never really a love match between them, so it's kind of weird seeing it romantic in the show, because basically, you know what, the books have been out for a while, so just be aware there's going to be some spoilers for the books, but Armand is basically directly responsible for Claudia's death, and Louis knows that. He doesn't know the full extent of how guilty he is for some time later, but he knows immediately, like, no, you did this, you could have stopped this, it's your fault. So immediately, that's like a big, you know, elephant in the room of their relationship with each other. And yet they stay together, and it's mainly because Louis doesn't know any other vampires at this point. The only other vampires he's known, he has killed all of them, or they have been killed themselves. So it's really just kind of, well, batter up, you're the only one left. So they hang out for a long time. And yeah, it was never a love match between them. So I'm wondering if that's going into Armand maybe controlling the narrative to make it romantic between them, like switch a few little memories in order for Louis to be romantic with him. I'm sure like Armand thinks he's doing it for Louis's best interests. Like, oh, I was trying to protect you and like have you feel better, because Louis is a shell of a vampire after Claudia dies. Like, he just isn't the same. So I'm thinking maybe that we might see in season 2. I don't know, but it'd be interesting to go that direction. Another big deal this season 2 is the Théâtre des Vampires in Paris. This is a big deal in the book. It's a big deal for Louis and Claudia, and they are bringing it in full force. So I'm gonna kind of TLDR the theater and how it was formed. So a long time ago, when Lestat was still in Europe, he was still kind of a baby vampire. You know, he was out being his Lestat self around town, and he comes across like this satanic vampire cult, and it's a big organization. Like, the satanic vampire cult has like franchises in other cities and stuff, and the one in Paris in particular was run by none other than Armand himself. He was living his cult leader fantasy in this satanic vampire cult. Lestat and Armand, this is their first meeting. It doesn't go well because they're all saying, Lestat, you're a blasphemer. How dare you go into a church, and like la la la. Lestat's living his life like he's a human, and the vampires can't fathom this. And Lestat starts, you know, talking a lot and saying like, why do you believe that? That is nonsense. What do you mean vampires can't go into churches? I go into churches all the time. I ate a guy in a church once. Like, what's stopping you? Like, there's no satanic vampires. Like, what? Like, he just kind of lays some truth bombs, and these truth bombs detonate, and essentially it causes this big rift in the cult, and eventually many of the members leave the cult, and the cult ends up just kind of fizzling out. And this also leads to a lot of resentment in the relationship between Armand and Lestat. It takes them a long time to get to be friends. For a big chunk of time, Armand doesn't like Lestat. He hates this guy. He will actively make Lestat's life terrible, but in his like gentle, soft-spoken way. Like, Armand, Lestat, not friends. Armand does terrible things to Lestat. He kidnaps Lestat's boyfriend and tortures him. And then you get to like the whole Claudia situation, and like Lestat shows up at that time too, and he's like, this is the perfect opportunity to make Louis think Lestat had more to do with this than he actually did. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Sorry, spoilers, but there's a whole thing here. So I think that is going to be a big chunk of the season because it's such a pivotal moment in Louis' life. Speaking of Lestat, where is the Brat Prince this season? Last season we saw him mostly murdered, like he does survive, obviously. You know, Sam Reed is just doing such a good job with this character. There's no way they won't give him screen time. There's no way it's only going to be Armand and Louis all season. I don't know if they're going to put Lestat into situations that are made up for the show and have nothing to do with the book, because there is a big chunk of time where like Lestat and Louis don't have any contact with each other at all. Like maybe we'll get some flashbacks of Lestat's past and like how he was made. Maybe we'll get to meet some characters that I'm really excited to meet eventually in the show that are in the book. Lestat's mother, Gabrielle, who is a great character. I would love her to make an appearance. That would be so cool. I think it'd be really, really cool if Marius made an appearance this season. I don't think they have enough time to do a lot with him this season, but I would like it if they introduced him because he's such a big deal to both Armand and Lestat that I would want to see that. Maybe some flashbacks with either of them respectively. We might get some backstory on Armand. We might get some backstory with Lestat. I don't know, but it would be really cool to see him. So all of those things I think are going to be the vast majority of the story this season, but I still have a few questions that I don't really know how to predict necessarily. Like, for example, the time frame in the show is different than the time frame in the books. This time they're in Europe in World War II era. Like, how is that going to affect the story? Like in the book, the whole time period is just glossed over. I think Lestat was napping through the whole decade at that time. So, you know, there's not a lot of World War II era notations going on, but I would like to see how that affects the story because their travel is going to be very different. How are they going to deal with Nazis? There's a lot going on there. So I think they would be really interesting to see how that changes things. Also, what's gonna happen to Daniel? It's hard to predict because this Daniel is very different from Book Daniel. Book Daniel is much younger for starters, and surprisingly enough, Armand and Daniel have a romantic relationship in the books. At least in Queen of the Damned, they are in a romantic relationship. And Armand ends up turning Daniel into a vampire for his own protection, essentially. So I'm wondering if that is gonna happen at all, because it's a thing in the books. I don't see how they would like get that to shoehorn into the story, at least not in a romantic sense, but they could turn him. I don't know. You know what I would love to see happen with Daniel? Okay, so the end of Interview with the Vampire, the book. Daniel, he goes off to look for Lestat because he wants to meet him. What would happen if like the end of the interview happens, Daniel's done, he gets all his tapes together, and then who shows up? Lestat to give his side of the story. Or what if he goes and finds Lestat to get his side of the story for this interview? Oh my god, that would be so cool. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but I want it to. I think that would be chef's kiss. And moving forward in the timeline for Vampire Chronicles, are they going to start talking about the events of Queen of the Damned? Because that is kind of the next book really in the saga. Because the Vampire Lestat book 2 is mainly Lestat's autobiography with like a little bit of the present in there, but mostly it's all backstory. So the present again is Queen of the Damned. Are they going to bring in Akasha? Are they going to start talking about her? Will she be a presence? I mean, in the books, Lestat becomes a literal rock star. He is like on MTV, a rock star in the 80s in the books. So I don't know if they're going to make Lestat into a rock star today. Who knows? I don't know if they're going to bring that up, but Louis and Lestat also get back together in that book. So like maybe, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a lot of like excitement for it. All right, so this was just a big jumbled mess of my thoughts, but I am super pumped for season 2. I will be doing episode recaps again. I am very excited for it. I have a lot of things I want to see, and I don't know if everything's gonna happen because it's so different than the book. Like, it's similar enough of a story that you can like see the similarities, but it like completely different lens are telling it through, so it's hard to really pick which parts of the story they're going to bring into the show. So we'll see come May 12th. Let me know in the comments down below. Are you excited for season 2? What do you want to see happen in season 2? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos or a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.